Welcome to Craig's Gun Channel. This week we're going to cover the MP40 by German Sports Guns, or Gsg. The Machine and Pistol 40, or more commonly abbreviated as the MP40, is a submachine gun chambered in 9mm developed during the Second World War by Nazi Germany. A simple and effective weapon, it was produced in large numbers and saw extensive use by the Germans on both the Eastern and the Western fronts. It was designed in 1938 and was a simplified version of the MP38, which was similar in most respects. However, it utilized a material and labor-intensive machine steel receiver. With the primary goal to simplify production, a stamped sheet metal receiver was developed, and that, along with some other simplifications, became designated the MP40. The MP40 submachine gun was an open-bolt, blowback-operated submachine gun that only provided for fully automatic fire. However, its relatively low rate of fire of around 500 rounds per minute did enable single shots with carefully controlled trigger operation. The bolt featured a telescoping return spring guide, which also served as a pneumatic recoil buffer. Early versions featured a cocking handle permanently attached to the bolt. However, in later versions it was a separate piece. The cocking handle could serve as a safety by locking into notches above the main opening to lock the bolt either in the cocked or the uncocked position. A unique feature of the MP40 was an aluminum, steel, or bakelite resting bar pinned under the barrel. This was intended to be used to steady the weapon when firing over the side of an open-top armored personnel carrier or through a tank port. The handguard was made of a synthetic material derived from bakelite and was located between the magazine housing and the pistol grip. The gun also had a forward-folding metal stock, a unique feature at the time, which resulted in a shorter overall weapon, making it ideal for use in confined spaces. The firearm quickly became a favorite weapon among soldiers, and with over 1.1 million produced during the war, it was frequently encountered on the battlefield. Today there's few surviving examples, and the only way to own one is to purchase it with the requisite NFA paperwork and an outlay in the neighborhood of $20,000. Or at least that's the way it was until a few years ago, when German Sports Guns, or GSG, began production of a semi-automatic version. German Sports Guns is a German firearm manufacturer which specializes in copies or replicas of famous military firearms. They developed a near copy of this classic weapon and began offering it for sale in the US in 2017 upon receiving ATF approval to do so. Today they're imported by their exclusive importer, American Tactical Imports, and are available as a 9mm pistol without the folding stock per NFA regulations. Let's take a closer look. And of course, before working on any firearm, you need to make sure it is free and clear of any ammunition. On the Gsg Mp40, the magazine release is right here. It simply pushes in on that button and the magazine comes out. And as you can see, the magazine itself is free and clear. There's the charging port there. We'll go ahead and lock the bolt back. And as we can see, the chamber area is also free and clear. So we'll go ahead and talk about some of the design features of the Gsg Mp40. The Gsg Mp40 has a barrel length of 10 inches. Barrel runs from approximately here forward. Overall length from front to back is 24.5 inches. It's 7 inches tall and weighs in at just under 8 pounds empty. The proprietary magazines have a 25 round capacity. Right here. It is a double stack single feed magazine. This actually proved to be a little bit of a problem for the original MP40. The original MP40 also was a double stack single feed. The problem you have with magazines like this is, while it's technically better designed from an operational standpoint, there's only a single way for the cartridges to have to be fed into the chamber. The reality is the additional stresses placed on the cartridges and additional friction as they go from the double stack to the single causes reliability issues, and the MP40 during World War II suffered from that as well. It's not something that was impossible to overcome. Just magazines have to make sure that the feed lips are, in good order, and that there's no dirt or anything. The magazines would be more susceptible to dirt and feed issues because of that. Another problem that the World War II MP40 had, and this one I'm sure would as well, any type of firearm that has an extended magazine that comes down so far, is when the magazine is inserted, people tend to try to grab the magazine as a handle, and that puts undue stress on the geometry of the feed lips to the chamber on the internally, and can cause feeding issues. So a prescribed place to hold the firearm was on the hand grip, fore-end grip right here, and then the hand grip. And of course the actual World War II MP40 had the folding stock, so this angle and grip surface here would be a little bit more intuitive. You tend to try to reach forward farther when you're shooting this in this form without the stock on it. The original full auto version had a 9.9 inch barrel, so the 10-inch barrel is very close to the original. Also, the original was 24.8 inches long. There again, very close to the 24.5 inches of the GSG version. While in outward appearance it's a near copy of the real MP40, the GSG version is different in many respects. From an operational standpoint, of course, it operates as a closed bolt semi-automatic as opposed to the original's open bolt full auto operation. Also, the receiver is cast Zamic as opposed to being stamped steel. The barrel protector right here is cast into the barrel. This is actually a steel barrel insert. What you actually see here is a cast Zamic profile for the barrel, and you can actually see there's a little bit of a seam line that runs down the middle, and this feature is cast into it, whereas on the original MP40 this piece right here, there would be a little extension that goes into that, and there'd be a pin there. This is it's all represented here, it's just not real. This would be a bakelite or an aluminum piece that would go on there, and it was meant to be replaceable. That way you could rest the barrel on a solid surface and it wouldn't damage the barrel. So most all the dimensions are very close, but there's just very slight, differences in all the sizes, and there's no parts compatibility between the two. Even the magazine in outward appearance looks identical. All the detail is pretty much the same. These will not interchange either way, so you couldn't use original MP40 magazines with your GSG version, and you couldn't use the GSG magazines with your original MP40, should you be lucky enough to have one. And anyway, similar, as I'd already mentioned, they were double stack single feed with all the problems that has as about, as far as that goes. From outward appearance, however, it's from any distance at all, you really can't tell these apart. They did a really good job in copying the contours and everything. So let's go ahead and take a look at controls and features of the MP40. We'll start from the front and work our way back. On the front, it does have a threaded barrel. The muzzle nut or thread protector is held in place. There's a, similar to like an AK-47, there's a little detent right there that you'd push in, and then you could unthread the muzzle nut. It has a hooded front post sight, front slings mount. There's the magazine release. You'd simply push that in to release the magazine. This is our safety control right here. It is a rotary knob that is not real intuitive in operation. It has an arrow on the bottom that points in two directions, front and back. If the arrow is parallel to the firearm, there'll also be a little F right there on the bottom of the wheel. That means it's in the fire position. If you turn it to the side so that the arrows are perpendicular to the firearm, then you'll see there's also a little S, and that's in the safe position. There is no stop to it, so it just sits there and rotates. So you have to kind of know what the condition was in before you turned it to know what condition it's in afterwards, or you'd have to visually look at it. You might be able to tactily tell, tactile-wise, the little arrow that comes down, it is raised so you can feel it. So as far as other controls, of course we have our trigger. This is the bolt handle right here. It does have a notch in the top so you can lock the bolt to the rear by simply pulling back and lifting up, like so. And then to release it, you could just, lower it down or give it like the HK slap, so to speak. It has a 2-leaf rear sight that you can lift up for further elevation. The sight is adjustable for windage. There's a little Allen screw there that you could loosen that, and then this will move back and forth. And as you can see, this one actually is a little bit loose. I need to tighten that up. I've heard mixed reviews on how well this works. There's a little detent that's underneath that set screw, and if you were trying to just adjust it a little bit, it tends to try to pull it back into position. So I don't know how successful you'll be actually being able to adjust that. And this assembly is made out of plastic. So as far as disassembly, first thing you want to do is make sure that the hammer is in the forward or uncocked position, and you'd want the bolt to be in the forward position to take the spring tension off. So we'll go ahead and bring the bolt forward, release the trigger to release the hammer on the inside. It does have an internal hammer. We'll take a look at that here in just a second. The takedown pin is right here, and there is a little E-clip on it, so you just need to pop that E-clip off. This particular one, it just pops right off. There's not a whole lot of tension on it. So just take that off. The pin itself, in this particular example, you do have to kind of tap it out with a punch. There is quite a bit of spring tension on it between this upper receiver and the lower receiver. The internal spring pushes against the rear of the lower receiver, so there is spring tension between the two parts. So if you would just magically pop the pin out, the spring would kind of push those parts apart. So you need to make sure you kind of hold it together when you're taking the pin out. So we'll go ahead and tap the pin out a little bit. And once it's most of the way out, at this point, you'd want to make sure you kind of keep that, some tension between the two parts. Take the pin out, and then the spring will kind of do the rest by sliding it apart. You have the upper receiver and the lower receiver. We'll take a look at the lower receiver first. So there's the hammer right there. And it's, like I said, it's just a hammer fired operation. You pull the trigger and that just releases the hammer. And that's pretty much it. No further disassembly is required or should be really done on this. This is the fire control assembly is all in here. You have your trigger transfer bar right there. You have the disconnector, everything on the inside. You wouldn't really want to take this any farther apart because any change in the geometry on anything in there could cause it to be unsafe or inoperable. So go ahead and set that aside. The upper receiver, at this point, you can remove the recoil spring, and this is a little plunger body. We'll take a look at that in just a second. The bolt handle can just lift off. It's held in place with a little detent ball, and there's a groove in the pin. You can then slide the bolt out. So this is the bolt assembly. The spring goes on that like this, and then this is inside on the inside, and then this spring guide will go inside this piece here when it's fully recoiled back. So as far as the other parts here, we have our firing pin right there. The hammer goes into this notch right here, hits the firing pin on the back, which would then protrude out of the front to fire the cartridge. That's our extractor right there that would grasp onto the rim of the cartridge to extract it. On the upper receiver, let's see if we can get a visual here. There's our ejector right there. That little shiny piece is the tip of it, and when the bolt comes back, it pulls the cartridge. That hits the other side from where the extractor is, and it just pops the cartridge out. Then when the bolt goes back forward, it takes a fresh cartridge out of the magazine and feeds it into the chamber. That's pretty much all there is to it. This is as far as you'd want to disassemble this. And there again, any further disassembly, it's not really required for anything. You can get access to everything you would need to clean at this point. So at this point, you would just want to clean everything down, wipe it all down, and then reassembly is just the opposite. You get your bolt, and it slides in. Oh, just so you know, these little rail sections right here, right there, and even this top section all keys into corresponding grooves on the inside of the upper receiver. So you would just line those up and it just slides into place. You can go ahead and pop your charging handle back in. Just make sure that slides back and forth freely. Put your recoil spring on, make sure it goes over that post. And of course it should go into the hole in that there. Now there again, this can really only go together one way because it's not fully round or circular. So that'll go in there. Now comes the part where you have to kind of hold this all in together and juggle it back into the lower receiver. I found the easiest way to do it is to kind of hold this end up on end. You can go ahead and push the recoil spring in. This little half round shape here basically goes around that spring guide right there. That's the magazine release spring. So it kind of goes in like so. And then you have to lift up on it to clear. So basically at this point, you're like this. Then you just pull down on it and then just pull back. Line up the hole. Put your pin in. Reinstall your E-clip. And you're reassembled. So now that we've seen it close up, let's head out to the range.
Oh man, that is awkward. Try this again. Nope. Horrible trigger. Horrible. Yeah, the reset is...
Yeah, the reset. And we're out the range with the Gsg Mp40, which this magazine we had some trouble with a little bit earlier. It didn't want to feed. It was causing the rounds to kind of jam into the bottom of the chamber instead of going into the barrel. So went ahead and oiled it up a bit to see if that helps. So we're going to just run some rounds through it to see if it works or not. Well, that seemed to cure that one anyway, so we'll go ahead and put another one in and see how it does. At the range, we found it to be heavy and awkward to hold, especially without a stock. It's very front heavy, and the trigger is, well, the trigger's terrible. With that said, I was actually impressed with its accuracy. The crude sights actually allowed for a pretty good sighting, and the weight pretty much makes the recoil negligible. So what's it good for? Well, you've seen it. This is a range toy. It's good for fun and casual plinking, but not much else. Even at that, your arms will tire quickly shooting it, and while it's accurate enough at short ranges, anything long range would be problematic. A stock would definitely help, and ATI does in fact offer one if you want to go through the paperwork, hassle, time and expense that would entail. But even then, it would just be a more expensive plinking gun. It'd be a fun one though. Do I regret getting it? Not at all. Many of the guns I've owned over the years have been for nothing more than fun, and this one is definitely fun. I hope you enjoyed the video. I had a lot of fun making it. I appreciate your viewership, I value your comments and feedback, and as always, until next week, stay safe.